Within the theatre of our own minds, we are almost always the protagonists, captains of industry, comedic geniuses in waiting, or unspoken masters of logic. We gaze into the mirror of self-reflection and tend to see a version of ourselves that is polished, capable, and statistically above average. It is a comforting fiction, a necessary armor for the ego. Yet, if we were to strip away the vanity and confront the raw data of our existence, we would find a startling discrepancy. The reality is that your internal compass regarding your own competence is likely broken. You are probably far less capable than you imagine in domains where you feel confident, and, ironically, far more skilled than you give yourself credit for in areas where you are truly proficient. This disconnect between perception and reality is not merely a quirk of personality. It is a fundamental glitch in the human operating system, a cognitive blind spot that obscures the true nature of our intellect. This psychological phenomenon was brought into the harsh light of scientific scrutiny in 1999 by psychologists David Dunning and Dunning-Kruger. Their research uncovered a paradox that has since defined our understanding of human ignorance and expertise. In their study, participants were subjected to a battery of tests measuring humor, logical reasoning, and grammatical precision. Following the examinations, these individuals were asked a simple yet trap-laden question: how do you think you performed compared to everyone else? The results were a revelation of human delusion. Those who dwelt in the bottom quartile of performance, the truly incompetent, assessed themselves as stellar, believing they had outperformed the vast majority of their peers. Conversely, the true top performers, those who had mastered the material, consistently underestimated their standing, assuming that if the tasks were easy for them, they must have been equally easy for everyone else. This distortion creates a dual-sided cognitive bias known as the Dunning-Kruger effect. It suggests that the incompetent are blessed with a fortress of false confidence, shielded from the painful truth of their own ineptitude by the very nature of that ineptitude. They are trapped in a catch-22 of the mind. The specific skills required to provide a correct answer are the exact same skills required to recognize what a correct answer looks like. Without the knowledge to judge performance, one cannot judge one's own failure. As Dunning poignantly noted, if you are incompetent, you cannot know you are incompetent. You wander through the world of facts and logic like a tourist without a map, convinced you know the terrain better than the locals because you are unaware of the mountains you have yet to climb. On the other side of this spectrum lies the curse of the expert. For those who have dedicated themselves to deep learning, the horizon of knowledge is constantly receding. They are painfully aware of the nuances, the exceptions, and the vast complexities that govern a subject. To them, the world is not black and white, but a paralyzing shade of grey. This awareness breeds doubt. They assume their specialized knowledge is common, projecting their own competence onto others, and thereby ranking themselves lower than they deserve. Thus, the world is left with a tragic imbalance. The ignorant are armed with unshakable certainty, while the wise are plagued by hesitation and self-doubt. We see this played out in the mundane theatre of everyday life. Consider the act of driving, a complex interplay of physics and reaction times. Studies reveal that a staggering 93% of American drivers consider themselves to be in the top half of skill, a statistical impossibility that highlights our collective delusion. This inflation of self-worth bleeds into the corporate world, where the hierarchy of competence is often inverted by ego. In many organizations, over 40% of employees rank themselves in the top 5% of performers. We cannot all be the best. Logically, there must be a most. And statistically, most of us belong there. Yet, our internal narrative refuses to accept mediocrity. The root of this disconnect lies in a mental process known as metacognition, the ability to think about one's own thinking. It is the brain's quality control manager, the internal observer, that flags errors, questions assumptions, and recognizes patterns. The tragedy of the Dunning-Kruger effect is that incompetence in a specific domain is effectively a failure of metacognition in that domain. The incompetent lack the view from above. They cannot step outside their own thought process to see where it has derailed. Consequently, in their subjective reality, they never make a mistake. They are always right, not out of malice, but out of a genuine inability to perceive the error. This realization is unsettling on a personal level. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that in the areas where we are most ignorant, we are likely the most confident. We don't know what we don't know, and our brain fills that void with a comforting, yet false, sense of mastery. However, the implications transform from unsettling to dangerous when we zoom out to the societal level. We live in an ecosystem of ideas where confidence is often mistaken for competence. As Dunning observed, incompetence rarely leaves people confused or cautious. Instead, it fills them with an inappropriate confidence that feels indistinguishable from knowledge. This creates a noisy public sphere where the least qualified individuals are often the loudest, broadcasting their simplistic solutions to complex problems with charismatic conviction. Meanwhile, the true experts, burdened by the weight of nuance and the understanding of how much they don't know, speak in caveats. They are quieter, more hesitant, and harder to understand. The gap between the expert's intricate understanding and the layperson's desire for simple answers means that high-level knowledge often fails to translate. In the marketplace of ideas, who wins? The confident amateur who speaks in absolutes, or the cautious expert who speaks in probabilities? In our modern era, where the barrier to entry for public speech has effectively vanished, this dynamic has been exacerbated. We have access to the sum of human knowledge, yet we often only have the patience for headlines. We are incentivized to have a hot take on geopolitics, epidemiology, and economics, often within the same hour. The Dunning-Kruger effect, amplified by the algorithms of social media, ensures that the voices dominating the conversation are frequently the ones least tethered to reality. They offer the comfort of certainty in an uncertain world, while the truth remains complex, difficult, and often unsatisfying. There is a seduction in having a voice, in being seen, in feeling impactful. We are told that silence is complicity, that we must speak up to change the world. And while there is nobility in being a force for change, there is perhaps a greater forgotten virtue in the discipline of silence. Does the world truly suffer from a lack of opinions? Or does it suffer from a surplus of ill-informed noise? The irony of stating this, of adding more words to a saturated world, is palpable. Yet, the goal is not total silence, but careful noise. It is the pursuit of epistemological humility. It is the admission that while we cannot help but have opinions, we can choose to hold them loosely, to whisper them rather than shout them, and to recognize the borders of our own intellect. It is easy to hear about the Dunning-Kruger effect and immediately apply it to others, to that co-worker, that politician, that relative. You might think, I am self-aware. I know my limits. But be warned, the first rule of the Dunning-Kruger Club is that you do not know you are a member. Believing yourself to be immune is, in itself, a symptom of the condition. You likely know just enough about cognitive biases to think you can outsmart them, but not enough to realize that the brain is a perpetual deception machine. We are all subject to this. We all have pockets of profound ignorance masked by unearned confidence. The only antidote is a shift in attitude, a willingness to embrace the role of the novice. By choosing to be a nobody in more conversations, by allowing our presence to be defined by listening rather than speaking, we might align ourselves closer to the truth. We must make peace with the fact that we can only be truly competent in a tiny fraction of human endeavors. For everything else, we are tourists, and that is okay. The quality of our opinions usually drops as the quantity of them rises. Ultimately, the Dunning-Kruger effect is not a diagnosis to be cured, but a sliding scale we travel upon throughout our lives. As we take on new challenges, we will inevitably start at the peak of Mount Stupid, flushed with the excitement of the beginner. But if we persist, if we truly learn, we will descend into the valley of despair, realizing how little we actually knew. Only then can the slow climb to genuine understanding begin. Life, then, is a continuous cycle of shattering our own illusions, of realizing how wrong we were, and finding beauty in the complexity that replaces our simple, confident errors.